You're watching Mick and T Sports Report on CHCO-TV. And now, here's two guys that always dreamed of being roadies for the tragically hip Evan and Joe.
I'm Joe Ticotsky down in New Haven, Connecticut.
And I'm Evan McFarlane here in St. Andrews, New Brunswick. It is now turning to winter.
Yes. And this is the 46th episode of Mick and T Sports Report. Evan is back. And as Mark mentioned in the opening, at one time, we were both roadies for the tragically hip.
Sure, I wish.
I've wanted to talk about this since we started our show over 3 years ago. The Tragically Hip were arguably the most popular rock band in Canadian history. They had 9 #1 albums and over 50 singles over their 33-year career, but they're virtually unknown in the United States. So, Evan, for the benefit of our American audience, what made the Tragically Hip so popular?
The fact that they're not like internationally renowned is almost a crime. The hip are they're almost like that. Like they have almost like a cult following. Like they're just that they embrace being Canadian that much. They sang about Canadian events. It's almost like the Bruce Springsteen effect. You get people who bought in, or like, this is the best band, this is all I'm listening to. And man, they were awesome. And it was such a tragedy when Gord Downie passed away, because they still had so much time to, like, they were still peaking. Really, like they just keep putting out banger after banger. And yeah, it's weird that they're not making new music, but their stuff's kind of timeless.
Yeah, and I mean, I've pretty much followed music everywhere, and I really do not know many of their songs at all. But now, fun fact that I looked up, which you may not even know. Do you know where the Tragically Hip got their name from?
No.
It's from a skit in the Mike Nesmith movie called Elephant Parts. Now, it's a 2-part question. Do you know who Mike Nesmith was?
No.
He's the tall guy with the knit hat from the group in the TV show The Monkees.
Oh.
But I don't know how many people know that, but
no, cool fact.
All right, well, we're going to sort of tie that in. As you may have noticed, we haven't had the music spotlight feature lately because I don't want to say we got in trouble, but we're trying to figure out how we can legally play song clips without copyright infringement or violation from the big boys at YouTube. So until we figure that out, we'll just mention a band or song and throw up the links, and hopefully you'll take the time to explore it. So this is sort of a perfect segue. Let's start out with a recent release of a song from the late Gord Downie of the Tragically Hip, along with the group's producer named Bob Rock. It's a great tune that I had just heard, and it's called Luster Parfait. And unfortunately, we can't play it, but you can find it on that damn YouTube, as well as Spotify or wherever you legally download music. Well, coming up next, we interview the first boxer we've ever had on the show. And while we'd love to play you out to the break with the song The Boxer by Simon and Garfunkel, YouTube laws, we cannot. So, oh well. Well, this is Mick and T Sports Report here on CHCO-TV in St. Andrews, and we'll be back. Welcome back to Mick and T Sports Report on CHCO-TV. Our first guest is the first boxer we've ever interviewed on the show. Hailing from St. John, New Brunswick, the port city, she is now based in Montreal. She became the first ever Canadian Youth World Champion when she won a gold medal at the 2018 Youth World Championships in Budapest. And earlier this year, she won a silver medal at the IBA Women's World Championships. Let's welcome in boxer Charlie Cavanagh. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, the obvious opening question. How did you get into boxing?
Yeah, I sort of have a roundabout way of getting into boxing. I started out in judo from a young age. I believe I was 5 or 6 when I started. And my dad put me in judo to teach discipline. He was very big on that. And I never really enjoyed it. I did it, and one day I had a friend who was involved in boxing, and asked me if I wanted to come try it out. And I did, and I really liked it. So my dad was okay with me making that switch sort of from judo to boxing because it was still a combat sport. It was still sort of in that same realm. And he actually used to be a recreational boxing coach. So then him and I started going together, and it just sort of took off from there.
Okay. Now, have you faced any obstacles or prejudices being a female boxer?
Yeah, I think there's always an element of being a woman in combat sport. There's always a bit of people not taking you as seriously or thinking that it's not necessarily as high level. And that's a little bit frustrating at times, but as I've progressed and gotten to the level that I'm at now, I sort of leave that in the background and let my actions, my sport speak for itself. Don't really care to attend to people who don't like it.
Yeah, just fight them.
Exactly.
Evan?
Yeah, so we kind of live in an era now where sport specialization is just kind of how you go. I mean, I'm from a small town, St. Andrews, where you had to play every sport that was available in order to make a team. So you said you played a lot of other sports when you were growing up. I was just wondering what you played in high school and college, and if you think that any of them were really key into helping your boxing development.
So yeah, growing up, I did everything. I did the really girly sports, cheerleading and dance, and I did judo, and I was sort of all over the place. I think judo really helped with boxing, translated well with the footwork aspect of it. Going into high school, I started to take boxing a bit more seriously. So throughout high school and university, I tried to limit my other sports to sports that I felt would help my boxing. In high school, I was on the cross country team, I was on the swim team, and in university, I was on the track and field team. So running and swimming, both individual sports and very cardio heavy, I found that they helped my boxing, but they were never my main focus. They were sort of just things I did on the side.
All right. Now, are there female boxers that you looked up to as idols or for inspiration in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, in general, there's a lot of female athletes that I look up to in the sport of boxing. Amateur athletes such as Mandy Bujold and Mary Spencer were two women that I looked up to all throughout my boxing career and still look up to this day. And one thing that I think I mentioned that was funny about that is Mary Spencer, who has gone to the Olympics before, and like I said, has been a huge inspiration to me. I actually ended up fighting her back in 2019. So sort of one of those instances where your idols become your rivals.
Yeah.
That's got to be odd in boxing. Like in basketball, if you play an idol, like, oh, I'm going to hit a shot in his face, I'm going to cross him over. Do you like wince a little bit and like, get ready, here it comes?
Yeah, it's definitely different, but as someone in the sport, you get used to it. I have friends that we've fought multiple times, and in the ring, it's completely different. And when the fight's over, you can really appreciate that other person and thank them and hug them, and it's really a fascinating sport in that sense, because you really are there to hurt the other person, but after the bell goes, you can be best friends.
Yeah, and I think
Joe and I don't hug after our fights.
well, Evan's always looking up at me after.
Yeah, I'm on the ground sleeping.
Yeah. All right, Ev, you got one more?
Yeah, Charlie, you made the conscious decision to go all in, kind of, and move to Montreal this year and do all of your practicing and training there for Team Canada. So maybe give us kind of a timetable and maybe what your goals look like for the next couple of years.
Yeah, sure. So for the past 10 years, I've been a student athlete throughout high school and university. And in May, I graduated from UNB with my science degree. At that point, I was asked to centralize to Montreal. I had been given that opportunity in the past, but had declined it just because I wanted to finish my education. But now that I'm done, I figured there was nothing holding me back. I moved to Montreal just this year in September, and now I train here full time. It's my job, and it's really taken my training to the next level. Next year is the Olympic qualifying year, so there's going to be a number of events that I will go to in hopes of qualifying for Paris 2024. So next year is going to be a busy travel year, and then if all goes well, 2024 will be the Olympic year. And that's really my main goal right now. I don't know what's going to come after that. I know that I want to go back to school eventually to do a graduate degree. But for now, my focus is on 2024 and hoping to make that happen. I don't know if a lot of people don't know this, but they're thinking of taking boxing out of the Olympics after 2024. So I tried in 2020 and I didn't make it. But now it really seems like this might be my last shot. So I'm giving it everything.
Yeah, that's exciting. And how are you enjoying living in Montreal?
It's different. I'm from St. John, New Brunswick, and it's a smaller city, but Montreal is huge. I can't leave my apartment without my Google Maps or I'll get lost. So I'm getting used to it, but it's definitely exciting. There's a lot going on here.
So I've been told to stay away from St. Catherine Street.
Okay.
We always like to finish up the interviews with a few fun facts about our guests, and I found out a few about you. Number one, you enjoy painting and you like to paint famous boxers. Is that true?
Yeah, in my high school, I was enrolled in advanced placement art class, and I sort of discovered my love of painting through that class. And we had to pick a portfolio and a theme that we really liked. So I chose boxing, obviously, and I started painting famous boxers, and they started to turn out well. I started selling them, and I did that for a number of years. I haven't painted recently, but be something fun to get back into.
Yeah. And then the second one, you want to pursue a career in dentistry. Still true?
It's still true, but if you know me or you know anyone that knows me, I kind of change my mind a lot. So I have a thing for standardized tests. Back in 2020, I took the LSAT because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Changed my mind. In 2021, I took the MCAT because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I changed my mind. And now here I am hoping to write the DAT and possibly pursue a career in dentistry. I think it's a little bit ironic because like I could punch your teeth out and then help you get new ones, but I think it'd be a cool career.
I was going to say, it's sort of like one-stop shopping. You know, you knock them out and hand them your card as they're, flailing around on the floor.
You could market a new like extraction procedure.
And then one other question that Evan and I both had. How long would either myself or Evan last in the ring with you? Or it's just say like, I know the whole joke is like, an untrained person's like, oh, I could beat you in a boxing match. But yeah, if an untrained person is in the ring with you, it's not going to be good, is it?
No, I mean, it really depends on what you're asking. Like, I've had a lot of men ask to fight me. And in St. John, my sparring partners were men, and just the experience level difference, it doesn't compare. Size really doesn't matter that much when you're talking boxing. Obviously, if someone was to try to fight me in the street, like I'm gonna pass because I'm not an expert in all things, but boxing specifically, I do consider myself an expert, and I would say you wouldn't last very long.
I already knew that answer, so it's okay.
Now, is there a lot of when you're in a boxing ring, just sort of your trainers going over scouting with you of opponents? Is that tough when you're overseas and maybe haven't seen that opponent until you're there? Is there a lot of strategy involved?
So one thing that's really great about the training environment that I'm in now here at the Institut National de Sport is we have a team of individuals that actually research our opponents and send us videos or send us clips that we can watch prior. I'm not huge on researching my opponents. I like to know if they're taller or shorter than me and if they're orthodox or southpaw. Some people really like to watch their fights and sort of analyze them, but I find that each time you get in the ring, you can fight differently. It depends what your opponent brings, and sometimes you need to be able to adapt and change the game plan. So I don't really like to go in with a set of I'm going to do this because she's going to do this, because she might not.
Yeah, and it's certainly not a sport like a baseball or basketball where you can sit on the bench and watch what's happening and then say, well, when I get in the game, then I'll try this. And you're just right there the whole time. Evan and I both had met Charlie this summer when she was at the event for the world's oldest basketball court and the golf tournament. And everyone said, oh, there's a female boxer here. And we're like, where? She actually got friendly with some of the camp staff for basketball, and just a delightful young woman, and obviously a very successful boxer. She is Charlie Cavanagh, Canadian boxer. And Charlie, thanks so much for being on the show, and we'll certainly follow your career and hope to see you in the 2024 Olympics in Paris.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Well, after a short break, it's Anne of Green Gables time on the Small Town Spotlight. Wait, what? That's correct. Evan, get your red pigtails ready. We'll be right back with more of Mick and T Sports Report here on CHCO-TV in St. Andrews. It's time for another edition of Small Town Spotlight here on Mick and T Sports Report. This time around, we head to one of New Brunswick's 3 neighboring provinces, Prince Edward Island. And in honor of PEI, you'll see I'm sporting a t-shirt from the Hand Pie Company in Uptown Albany, PEI, whose owner was a previous guest on Small Town Spotlight. The book Anne of Green Gables was a children's novel written by Canadian author Lucy Maud Montgomery, published in 1908, that takes place on Prince Edward Island. The book has been translated into 37 languages and has sold over 50 million copies worldwide. Coming to us from Kensington, PEI, population 1812, and home to the Island Stone Pub, let's welcome in George Campbell, the owner of the Anne of Green Gables Museum in Park Corner, and the Anne of Green Gables stores in Charlottetown and Cavendish. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, the Anne of Green Gables Museum is located in Park Corner, about 45 minutes northwest of Charlottetown. How long have you owned the museum?
Well, I've owned the museum since it opened. My mother and I started, mainly her, back in 1971. But the property which the museum is on, the Campbell homestead, has been in the Campbell family since 1776.
1776. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, if I came to the museum as a visitor, what would I expect to see there?
Well, we have a lot of artifacts in the museum that she wrote about in her books, and we have a lot of personal property, personal artifacts that was owned by the author herself, and that's on display. Handiwork, shawls that she owned, and letters that she wrote to different members of her family.
Okay. Now, in addition to the museum, I read that you also own the 2 stores in Charlottetown and Cavendish, and you're also the owner of Kindred Spirits. So tell me about the stores and about Kindred Spirits, what that is.
Well, the stores, of course, Anne of Green Gables stores, they mainly sell Anne of Green Gables product, but we have other gift and souvenirs based on Prince Edward Island, and we have also handcraft made by artists on Prince Edward Island. And so that's open all year round. The Anne of Green Gables store out of Cavendish in Avonlea Village is opened mainly from the middle of May until the Thanksgiving weekend and October 10th. And our Kindred Spirits wholesalers, we started developing product many years ago to sell to the retail stores in Prince Edward Island, but it's since branched out into we sell gifts and souvenirs to other retail stores in Nova Scotia and in New Brunswick and some into Ontario.
Okay. Now, I had read that Anne of Green Gables is a cultural phenomenon in Japan, of all places. How did that come about?
Well, as far as I know, and is that it was, this is for sure, it was translated into Japanese during the war by a young girl who was being raised in a Presbyterian missionary home in Japan. And she translated it. And then after the war, they made it required reading in the schools. So everybody that went to school knew about Anne of Green Gables. They not only did they have to read it, they fell in love with it, especially on the women's side. And so they really enjoy Anne of Green Gables. They wanted to be like Anne of Green Gables. Anne is a feminist and gets things done on her own, and Japanese girls and women want to be like Anne.
Okay, so there are a bunch of people walking around Japan with the red braids.
Absolutely. When you go over there with red hair, you are an instant star. In fact, the Anne of Green Gables story, in a lot of times for Japanese girls, is so personal about it. They don't even want to discuss Anne of Green Gables with you. It's their own special thing that is just between, it's just by themselves. That's all they wanted. They don't want to talk about Anne of Green Gables to anybody else. It's just so personal to them.
That's interesting. Now,
Yeah.
114 years later, why do you think the book still, in this day and age, strikes a chord with kids and adults all over the world?
Well, it's just the way that Anne is taking care of things on her own. She's sure a lively, spunky girl. And also, Lucima Montgomery describes the beauty of Prince Iran so well that everybody reads the books. First of all, over in Japan, they thought Prince Iran was in an imaginary place. They didn't realize they could come and visit Prince Iran. They thought it had to be a fictitious place. So when people when they read the book, they also want to come visit PEI for the beauty of it also.
Okay, so there are a lot of Japanese tourists that come to visit.
Oh yes, we have a lot. We haven't had any for the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but we're hoping that that the border will open it. In fact, it's open now, but we have no tourist season. So we're hoping that by next May, we'll have a lot of Japanese tourists again.
Okay. Do you speak Japanese at all?
No, the Japanese don't want me to speak Japanese to them. They want me to speak English. That's what they come here for, is to hear people speak English, not Japanese. And I used to try to learn a few Japanese words years ago, and they said, "Mr. Campbell, we don't want to hear you speak Japanese. we just want you to speak English to us," because they're wanting to learn English. So they want somebody to speak English back to them.
Sure. Now, Netflix has a series called Anne with an E, which is loosely based on the books. Have you seen that at all?
Well, I watched the first couple episodes, but I couldn't really watch it anymore after that. But it has become a big hit for people who didn't see the series back in the 80s with Megan Follows in it. So it's been translated into a lot of different languages. We've had people from all over the world come because Anne with an E was translated into their language, and they want to come visit Prince Edward Island.
Very neat, very neat. Well, here's George Campbell, owner of the Anne of Green Gables Museums, 2 Anne of Green Gables stores, and of Kindred Spirits Wholesalers. Will be popping up on the screen, the websites of the various places that you own, and we encourage our viewers to check them out. And if you're ever on Prince Edward Island, check out the museum and the stores and say hello to George. And George, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that was a fun interview. And didn't you dress as Evan of Green Gables for Halloween this year?
I sure did. I mean, got lots of turned heads. Finding the wig was the easy part, but finding stockings long enough and a dress to cover these getaway sticks of mine was a little bit rough.
Classic. And how about Charlie with the interview?
Yeah, great interview. I had a good conversation with her in the summer at the golf event here as well, but she's now moved up at least in the top 5 of people that I want to stay on the good side of and not anger.
Definitely. All right, you got a shout out.
Yeah, I'm going to shout out my entire team at the Algonquin Golf Course because we were just awarded Retailer of the Year for PGA of Canada Atlantic. It's been a couple good years of a lot of hard work that's paid off, and it's nice to get some recognition for it. So thank you, everybody, for your hard work.
And feel free to blow your own horn. What was the one that you were in the final 3 for?
Yeah, I was a finalist for Apprentice Professional of the Year. So came down to myself and 2 other deserving candidates, and it was just cool to be recognized in a group of very strong professionals in Atlantic Canada. We've always said we have some of the best pros in all of Canada, so it's nice to be considered up in there, as all of those awards are voted on by our peers in the association. So it's nice to be recognized by the guys doing the same job.
Excellent work. Keep it up.
Thank
Well, that is it for episode 46 of Mick and T Sports Report. Next month, we'll have a full recap of the Basketball by the Sea tournament, as well as the Grey Cup final. But until then, I am Joe here in New Haven.
And I'm Evan here in New Brunswick. It's getting cold.
Thanks to Patrick Watt and Florence Mitchell for producing and editing a show that proudly plays fast and loose with the YouTube copyright laws. So until next time, we'll be back with our final show of 2022. This is Mick and T Sports Report on CHCO-TV in beautiful St. Andrews. We'll see you next time.